So there is more to my life than trading. I've taken the opportunity this week to shift locations, brought the family with me. We're having a great time here, enjoying the good weather, the water sports and so on and so forth. And I'm taking the opportunity to trade. I love trading, I love traveling, and combining the two was my dream, and it always has been my dream for ages. So I constantly reach for both. And I'm conscious that I don't want to push trading as a lifestyle choice as something that you could achieve as well. It requires a lot of hard work. But nonetheless, you know, I thought it was important to show you that there are two sides to everything I do. I actually travel a lot more than I let on, but I just don't want to fall into that trap of trying to make it part of what Bait Angel is. That's entirely your choice. So yeah, there are loads of opportunities to do this now. Technology has come on enough to allow you to confidently trade from other locations. So the job that I had prior to Betfair trading, that I quit to actually go and trade on Betfair full-time for a living, actually involved international travel, and that was deliberate. It was something that I'd wanted to do for many years, and it was something that I enjoyed and embraced, and it was something that I also wanted to bring forward with me to my Betfair trading career. But at the start, I didn't have those sort of aspirations. I just wanted to keep things viable. So my very first setup that I had at home was basically in a half converted garage, and I just cobbled together what hardware I had and actively traded from there. It was a pretty basic start to my Betfair trading career. So what's happened over the intervening years is obviously things have moved on quite a bit, and I now have my own dedicated trading office, and that includes facilities where I can trade in front of my screen, or if I want a slightly more relaxing experience, on my sofa in front of the big TV screen. But the most important thing about this journey is not the transition from a basic trading desk to something a bit more complicated. It's the ability to be able to trade remotely. So when I first tried to trade remotely, I had loads of problems, because you would book a hotel that had Wi-Fi and internet, but it turned out that you were sharing that with 300 other guests at the hotel, and the connection was so slow it was pretty much unviable. So my solution to that was to actually rent a house. You could speak to the owner, you could get them to check the connection, but that did bring on other issues as well, and that was that I didn't have any live pictures. This was in the days when streaming live pictures from sports events was just unknown. So I actually used to cart around with me a satellite dish, one that you would stick on the side of a caravan or something, and that would allow me to basically point it at the right satellite and be able to view live pictures. So yeah, I would go through that enormous hassle to be able to trade remotely, but the benefit was that I would stay in a beautiful location, and I would have all of the things that I needed to be able to actively trade. It wasn't the same as sitting back at my office, but it was about as close as you could possibly get. So it wasn't long before technology began to improve quite rapidly, and by that I mean internet connections started to speed up and become more reliable, which meant that I could pretty much trade from anywhere. But the big thing that made a difference was streaming. Now, when you mention streaming nowadays, most people think of Netflix, and that was particularly handy when you were traveling with the family. But necessarily it meant that bookmakers and betting exchanges were actually streaming live sports events, which meant it was even easier to trade. And that meant that all you needed really was a decent internet connection, a laptop, and then you could actively trade and watch the pictures from that laptop or a spare screen. It was absolutely perfect scenario. And this has been something that I've done throughout my journey, is take pictures of where I've traded, just so that I can look back and reflect on my journey. Now, another thing that influenced being able to trade remotely was the dawn of Airbnb and those types of services, because no longer was I chastised by hotel groups and the locations in which they were placed and all of those sort of things. All of a sudden I could actually choose a location very specific for my needs, speak to the host, get everything sorted out beforehand, and suddenly that really opened up everything, because I could get absolutely the perfect location with absolutely the perfect facilities to be able to actively trade from. This was a major upgrade in terms of the ability to be able to trade remotely. So as time has moved on, I've settled into this pattern whereby if I want to trade remotely, all I need is a laptop. The ideal setup for me is actually to have a laptop and an iPad, because I can trade on either of those two devices depending upon where I want to trade from. And that could be inside a hotel, at an Airbnb, or pretty much anywhere. I've taken pictures of all of the places that I've actively traded from, and you will be amazed by some of them. But that was one of the things that I always wanted to do, and one of the things that I always dreamt of. But the interesting thing is, you literally can trade from pretty much anywhere. So you may laugh, but I've actually just done a few trades here, and I'm at about 10,000 feet altitude, but I can get a 4G signal here. I'm getting about 10 meg and about 5 up or so on. But yeah, it's possible to trade nowadays from virtually anywhere. So there's another piece of technology that was transformative in terms of remote trading. And it came very early on in my career because I knew that the problem I was trying to solve was I needed a high-speed internet connection that was very reliable. And because I'd worked for an internet service provider, I knew how to achieve that. And that was to actually connect to BetAngel through a Windows server. So very early on in my career, that's what I did. I set up BetAngel on a Windows server and then remoted into it from my laptop. And that had a number of benefits because it was very, very low bandwidth at the connection wherever I was. But also it meant that BetAngel could work for me remotely. Even if the connection dropped, it could basically tidy up positions for me, manage all of those positions via automation servants or however I wanted to do it. That was super beneficial. So I could actively trade on a very high speed connection in the UK, but it's very low bandwidth at the other end. But also the reliability aspects of it were significantly enhanced. And it was a sort of accident that that happened. But eventually, as I progressed through that particular journey, we ended up getting our own equipment set up at a data center and tweaking and refining everything that we could do from there. And that sort of ended up becoming the BetAngel VPS service as you see it now. It's a great way of connecting back to a very high-speed connection in the UK near the Betfair servers, but ultimately it's a very low bandwidth connection at the other end. And I put this to the test once when I was flying over the Atlantic because the plane that I was on, a Boeing Dreamliner, basically had half decent Wi-Fi in it. So I thought, well, let's give this a try. Let's fire up my VPS connection with BetAngel on it and see if I can actively trade from a plane. And rather bizarrely, it turned out that you could. But this was just another one of those steps that allowed me to trade with confidence remotely. So it's really important to finish this video with a key point, and that is if you can't trade behind a desk, then you're not going to be able to do it on some beach somewhere. That really just isn't going to work. So, you have to build up confidence much in the same way that I did. I worked from a low level. I got better and better at trading, and then I was ready to take the leap to be able to do that remotely. I needed to get that confidence behind me and know exactly what I was doing. And then it was a case of trying to solve all of those technological barriers to being able to do that. Now, fortunately, as technology has moved on and the world has gone into this sort of remote working era, that has become much more viable, and it's much, much easier to do than when I started. So if you want to be able to trade remotely for any reason whatsoever, it is perfectly possible. That's the point that I'm trying to get across in this video, show you the journey that I've been through, and show you that if you want to do something similar at some point, for whatever reason you choose to do so, you can do it too.